Hello and welcome to the Paper Prototypes podcast. I'm Rex and I'm here with my guest Stuffed Wombat, and today we're going to be talking about their game Mosa Lina. So, Wombat, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you get into game development?
Ooh, um, my name is Josh. Hello, thanks for having me. I got into game development by, yeah, there's okay, so there's the story I tell because it's funny, and then there's the actual story, I guess. Like, the funny version is that I skipped school and I got caught by my computer science teacher, and he forced me to attend a computer science class, where they were learning Scratch, the MIT block-based coding language, and I really liked that. And then I made like my first video game that night. Like I just went home and just I bought like 2 bottles of Pepsi and I just banged the whole video game out in the evening. Um, but I have actually been like making games for as long as I can remember. Like I used to like tell interactive stories to my brother and like invent board games and run pen and paper since I was like a child. Like yeah, ages ago. Long time.
And tell me about your game Mosa Lina.
Mm. I should have this actually. I should practice this. It's a puzzle game where I don't know if the level you get is actually solvable because you get random tools, and I haven't checked if the tools are useful for the level or not. So you have to use them very creatively, and you have to like there's not a solution to find. There's just many solutions that you maybe stumble upon or maybe not. Like it doesn't really matter if you fuck up, because maybe the puzzle is just not solvable. Like who knows? And that allows you to kind of like let go of feeling stupid or something. Like when you don't solve a puzzle in a traditional puzzle game, you're just stuck there for 10 years potentially, or until you look up a solution on the internet. But in Mussolina, like there's no solutions, there's no nothing. You can just play. That's the vibe.
So, on your Steam page, as well as what I saw on your Twitter, you described it as a hostile interpretation of an immersive sim.
Yeah, that's kind of like now that the game is escaping kind of like the extreme weirdo circles that I made it for. Like that phrase probably needs to change at some point. Like it is genuinely like the game comes out of a theoretical like investigation of immersive simulation subgenre, especially like the two which I spent like a few months really digging into. Um, and then, yeah, it's like the idea of the immersive sim is that you can like use your tools to like be creative, but the actual outcome of this, of like a genre like eating its own ass, is that you get a double jump ability, and then now you can go over the path where you have to double jump, and it's like that path was made specifically for that upgrade. Even if they don't say that explicitly, there's a lot of like the red tunnels in Dishonored, for example. It's like there's tunnels all over the levels and you can only use them with this specific ability. So this specific ability has its like its sandboxy use cases to escape and like negate fall damage and stuff like that. But as time went on, it just became, like, oh, basically this ability unlocks this door. I haven't actually played Deathloop, but from what I have heard about it, it seems like it's the most extreme version of that. Um, yeah, so I was like, okay, let's take this idea that you use your tools creatively to solve problems and try to like interpret it in a way that is kind of like uh evil or something, or like that is basically I was pissed at Dishonored 2. I was thinking that it was kind of like getting a little bit boring and stale, and it's like, yeah, so like, okay, let's push it to the extreme, and let's push it to the extreme in a way that is kind of like not necessarily making fun of or like trying to be mean about it, but just being like, hey, like here's your ideas. I think the ideas are really cool, but you're not following them at all. um so let's push it to the extreme, and the extreme is a space where there is no double jumping path. The extreme is actually a space where there's no path at all, where it's like, I don't even fucking know. Like, who knows? And then you get something that's really nice, I think.
So you would consider hostile design in games to be taking the base concept of a genre and just pushing them to their limit.
Yeah, or like it's like a hostile interpretation. It's not an immersive sim, right? This is a misconception. I don't see this as an immersive sim. I see it as like an interpretation of the rules of a subgenre, which is like, yeah, just being kind of mean about a genre's stated goals and being like kind of like, yeah. It's not a nice thing to do, but yeah.
Well, I think the
Yeah.
closest thing to like another hostile interpretation, which some people might disagree with this, would be like I've seen some people say that Dark Souls would be like a hostile interpretation of what a Metroidvania could be.
Mm, I I mean, there's always, I love to just talk about genres for 2 decades, but that's not interesting or useful to anyone. Um, like I Yeah, it's the thing, right? Like, is it a hostile interpretation? I think Dark Souls grew out of its own space, like out of essentially like um trying to model like choose your own adventure books or something into a video game space. That's how the early versions of the game feel. Whatever, this is not important. It's like, is it a hostile interpretation? I wouldn't say so. I don't think Dark Souls is. That's the thing, right? It's like Mosa Lina is also not a hostile game once you get over the hurdle, like the initial like um kind of like barrier of entry is relatively high for a game like that. Like, and it was made intentionally very high so that once you climb over it, you understand just how kind of like internally coherent the whole philosophy of the game is. Like with Dark Souls, like I played the first run, like I didn't even understand the poise mechanic or anything like that. And then I never, like you can play Dark Souls with daggers and then you never see stagger animations from enemies. So there's this whole part of the game that is just completely locked off from you just because you don't know it exists. But once you discover it, like the moment of discovery is so strong that it actually carries engagement with the game for a very long time, where you're like, every time I'm using a stagger mechanic, I'm like, this feels so cool because some point I didn't understand it. And that is so satisfying that the Dark Souls games just sell insanely well once you get over that barrier. So it's like what I'm trying to say is that while I feel that Mosa Lina is a hostile interpretation of a genre, and this whole convoluted mess is why I need to change the description at some point, because this is way too complicated for someone who just wants to have a fun time. Like Mosa Lina is a hostile interpretation of a genre, but as a game, it's very funny and joyful.
I gotta say,
Once you
it's a
get
good
over the,
pitch though. It's a good like, oh, sum up
uh,
your game. It hates you.
no, it doesn't though. It really loves you deeply and respects you, and it respects your creativity a lot.
Well,
Um,
I will
it's
say
just
there
that,
are certain things that
yeah.
you've done to really help reduce friction when it comes to Mosalina. Like,
Mm,
I noticed you have like super quick restart times for each level. You can press R to just if you don't even want to deal with the level, you're like screw it, I don't like this subset of tools. And then you can also
mm,
just be like fuck it, I want to regenerate a whole new map set and a whole new set of tools because there's no I don't want to say there's no win state, but there's like
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really
There's no
just
point in you trying. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like do
Like,
you want to do these levels with these tools? If not, go do a different set of levels with a different set of tools.
yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Like that is seen as a nice thing, but that like comparatively speaking to like contemporary game design, that is like such a um unusual, uncomfortable thing for people to experience. That's what I thought, at least while I was developing. I was very like scared, like, will people enjoy this, even though it's like kind of like setting itself up to be this throwaway thing. But it worked out. I don't know.
That's why
I don't
it's
know where
a
I'm going with this.
another I don't want to like keep harping on the same topic, but I did like
Mm,
the idea of hostile interpretation is because
mm,
it feels like games are often like built deliberately for a very hyper specific experience that what the creator wants the player to experience. While in
Yeah.
this game, that isn't the case. It's just sort of like you have to find your own experience, and if there isn't one, well, then you didn't
Yeah.
find one, and the game doesn't really hold
Yeah.
your hand in that regard.
Yeah. It's funny because I made games that that were laser focused to deliver a specific experience. Like I spent multiple years like working and reworking a game that has a playtime of like roughly 1.5 hours. It's called Quomp. Um, and it's this perfectly fine-tuned machine where everything is like not everything, but like it's really trying very hard to teach you everything you need to know before it presents you with a challenge that is like just one exactly like 10 centimeters below your like 10 centimeters out of your current reach, and then you can get those 10 centimeters of skill in engaging with that. Then it gives you the next thing that is just a little bit like a little bit harder. Like it's a very fine-tuned experience. And then when I had finished that, yeah, it was just kind of clear that I had to like after I finished that game, I played Limbo and Inside for the first time. I hadn't played them ever before, and I was like, oh shit, those games are doing exactly what I want to do, but they're doing it on such a higher level that I've already lost without knowing it. I just never played the games, so it's like they beat me at that game, so I had to do something different, and also it just becomes kind of tedious, yeah, to always be stuck in this. Like, here's a clever solution for you to look at. But actually, like, what these games are, I mean, I love them, but what they are saying essentially is like, hey, I'm really smart, and you can give me some money to experience how smart I am. And it's like, I don't know, like it's just, yeah, just needs to change a little bit.
I I gotta ask, what the hell's up with the name of the game? Like most, I tried
Mm.
recommending the game to someone on Steam and he couldn't
Oh
find it, and
yeah.
I was like, oh, it's not Mona Lisa, it's Mosa Lina.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long-standing tradition, I believe, of people who are primarily like experimental game designers, like people in their space, um, have a tendency to name their projects in ways that make no fucking sense and are completely like SEO anti-optimized. Like, like people will make the most unsearchable game just because the title is funny. Like that's kind of like the space that I come out of. So. Yeah, another of my games is called like Producer 2021. And if you Google that, you just get lists of the best like hip hop producers of 2021. It's like it's just you'll never find it. But the idea behind Mosa Lina, yeah, I'm fucking it up now, is that it was the very first version which we made like in a single evening just for fun. Um, was to be the opposite of the Mosa Lina, um, of the Mona Lisa. Man, oh, this is so embarrassing. Like the opposite of the Da Vinci painting. Like the Da Vinci painting is like this pristine thing, this mysterious smile. It's like nobody can figure it out, but everyone knows the picture by heart, and it's this like a grand masterpiece. And it's like it's like this really static thing everyone's supposed to really admire. I was like, okay, let's make the opposite of that. Like, let's make the opposite of like if Inside is the Mona Lisa of video games, then Mosa Lina has to be the Mosa Lina of video games. Like the opposite, the inversion, the kind of like fight, kind of like yeah, declaring war on perfection and smoothness and general likability. That's where the name is coming from.
Is that why you have the movement set up the way it is? Because I notice sometimes when I try climbing on objects, I like slide around and like it's like a struggle. Like I feel it's like a struggle to climb objects sometimes, but it's fun. Like it's just kind of quirky in
Uh,
that regard. But then moving left to right and jumping feels normal, so I could see where certain areas were almost
mm.
fine tuned to be difficult. Like your jump, you just kind of plummet to your death a lot of times. It's very short.
Yeah, yeah. It's, I mean, it's not really a deliberate thing. It's just like the controls. Like uh, there were a lot of prototypes before I started full production on just the movement mechanics because it's this whole convoluted thing. Like if the character has to be physics simulated so that everything can affect the character and you can jump off of everything. And like for everything to be interactive, everything needs to be parsed through box 2D physics, um, which is like you can set up a physics simulation super quickly, but to make it like controllable in a way that is not like to make it feel like you're actually playing a video game instead of just like applying a force to a box. It's a lot of tweaking and a lot of strange work, and I just like the way it is right now was just like the only way that worked to like have some character control, have very forgiving edge collision. Like that was a big thing to like make the character like the character can climb like very strange inclines and like jump off of a lot of stuff, and like you can basically like jump off of walls that you think you could never jump off. um because if it isn't that forgiving, then you will often die. You like people in the earlier prototypes died even more because it wasn't forgiving, and so they made a slight miscalculation. Like they had a solution for the level, they executed it, but the jump was just like a half second, and then they lost. And those deaths I had to like eliminate the most. So the character controller has to be very strange to facilitate, yeah, to be just extremely forgiving in that sense.
How did you come up with what were essentially like the music and ambiance of the game? Like, how did you?
I didn't make that. That's made by, sorry to interrupt. That's made by Tom Schley, who's um, producing music and sound effects under the name of Silkersoft.
Well,
Um,
I suppose my better question would have been like, why did you choose that direction to take the game? Um, because of just the way, like, I don't know how to describe the music. You just have to play the
yeah,
game to get a feel
yeah,
for it.
it's super. I really like it. So the process was that um, I had like Silkersoft and me have been talking for ages, for like years, and always like, oh yeah, like he's a hip hop producer as well, and I knew some of the music he had produced for hip hop artists, and then he followed me on Twitter because of some GIF, and was like, oh shit, let's work together someday. And then I think 2, 3 years later, we both had like an empty spot, and I pitched him the project, and we met, and his he's amazing. Like he just looked at it and he was like, okay, so let's like let's just look what it is. And I showed him the prototype and he's like, oh, this looks very dark and kind of like the earlier versions were much more barren and kind of like hostile visually as well. Um, so he looked at that and he was like, I want to make some really like horror alien like space soundscapes for that. And he was just like, here's my idea for the direction. And I was like, yes, that sounds perfect. Because like when like the way I'm doing collaborations is that there's not really like a lot of the weight is lying on the shoulders of the collaborators because there's not really a like design document or anything. Um, so when a collaborator has a vision, I just go with it. Because if they have a vision, that's going to be cool, probably. And then like I really pushed hard for um, the audio direction to be like similar to the Caretaker. Like it's a music project that's a lot of static, a lot of like 1920s ballroom music that is slowly fading away into the distance. Like there's a whole like I think 8 hour album by the Caretaker, which I forgot the complete name of, but which is essentially about the experience of having Alzheimer, where like slowly everything that you can hold on to like fades away and like becomes untouchable, and you just have this like, yeah, it's a horrifying experience. I was like, I just, yeah, uh, push that into the reference folder. And yeah. So basically, to answer your question, was like, Tom saw the visuals and was like, I want to do some scary, spooky stuff. And I was like, yeah, I really like this concept album about Alzheimer's. Let's combine that. um, yeah.
I guess that especially if you're going for a theme of Alzheimer's, I guess that fits between like I'm gonna say the between levels where if you die enough, it just drops you in an empty gray level where there's just hint
Yeah.
boxes, as well as what was your thinking like when you complete all the levels, you just get an uncompletable level with no powers and it's just gray. Like what was your thought
Yeah.
process behind that?
Um, that's a good question. I don't even remember that. Like, that was added super late. That was added like I think a few days before the demo went live. Um, um, just to have some sort of conclusion space. Um, where I guess the point that is being made is that you get nothing for beating the game. Um, and then the final release like makes that even stronger. In the demo there was a bunch of text and like information about like high scores and stuff and like like when the game is coming out. But for the full game it was like, okay, let's just make this like space that looks like it might be going somewhere, but that essentially will never go somewhere. Because all you can do when you finish a game, all you can do is like the only thing you get out of playing any game, like if it's Red Dead Redemption or fucking chess or whatever, the only thing you get out of that is that you had a nice time with the game. Um, and anything else is just, it's just made to look like real world currency or like real world outcomes to make you feel like you did more than you actually did. And yeah, that's, like I said before, like reject everything, like reject that as well.
I have to say one thing I really admired while playing this game is the way you were able to convey those themes and ideas just by just like a level that you can't complete at the end of the game. Like when I got
Mm.
there, I just couldn't help but laugh, and then I just played the game
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's nice. It's been very scary. Like every step of the way, it was like, can I really do this? Like, shouldn't I put some sort of meta progression? And I had a lot of different versions of meta progression. I had a lot of different like it's not like this came fully formed, right? This is like this is the end result of a process of saying no to every like conventional game design input that I got. Even like from friends who like saying like being like really concerned, like, hey Josh, your game's nice, I really enjoy the tools, but if you don't give people something in the end, they're gonna hate it. And then I put something in the end, like I put like whatever, I put a bunch like a lot of experiments, and in the end it was just like, no, it has to be like the most itself version of itself. Like I take the basic principle of like you just get random tools to solve a level and that's it, and just expand that. Like just like layer that over itself. Like melt it down and build it up again, and melt it down and build it up again, but never really fundamentally add something to that. Like actually like take stuff away that you think you have to add. Like this is a lot of subtraction in the process to be like, and every time you take something away that like people generally enjoy and expect in a game, that's scary. And that was like a resistance to overcome, where it's like, oh, okay. Uh, for the longest time, I was thinking, yeah, I'll do some achievements. Like people really like achievements. Nobody has ever mentioned that they would like achievements since the game come out. Maybe like two or three people were like, oh, like achievements would be nice. But that is like such a confirmation that the game works like on a experiential aesthetic level, that people can take it for what it is, that they don't, or like, okay, some people do, but like the vast majority doesn't want any extrinsic motivation added to that, which is insane. Like that goes against everything they teach you in game design school.
So speaking of adding to the game, how did you come up
Hmm.
with all the powers? Because some of them can be as varied as, here's a spear that you can think to yourself, oh, that's easy. I can build platforms with this, to fucking fish gun.
um, I mean, I have, I think easily like 70 items prototyped or something like that. Um, and then, it's like, oh, just look at I don't know where the stuff comes from. It's just like emergent properties of like physics simulation. It's like it's you can break it down. I didn't do it. Maybe I should have done it. I don't know. You can break down like any interaction in video games into like this kind of like matrix where it's like, oh, I have an object and I have a thing like I have a action and I have a reaction, right? So I can say, oh, the box hits a wall. And if the box hits the wall, the reaction is that there's an explosion. And that's the grenade function, the pomegranate item. Or I can say, oh, I can make a box, and when the box is created, it waits 3 seconds, and then there is an explosion. And that's like the bomb item. And you can just kind of like say like, oh, there's an item, and when it's created, it grows, or when it hits a wall, it shrinks. There's just these kind of like basic fundamental things that I've really explored deeply when I was making more linear games, like when I was making like more traditional puzzle games and stuff like that. It's like, oh, objects can move from left to right. Objects can kind of like disappear after 10 seconds and then appear again, or there's just like a baseline amount of interactions that are possible in 2D space. Um, and then I just tried basically all of them, and some of them didn't work, and some of them worked really well, and some of them I couldn't code, and some of them didn't work out at all, but showed me a different avenue. So it's like I worked on this game for I think like 6 or 7 months, and I worked on it like really consistently. Like there's just a large amount of stuff that got cut because it wasn't really working. Um, the spear, to answer a specific question, the spear is a direct reference to Rain World, where you can throw spears and they stick to walls. And I love that so much that I have tried replicating it many times, and it's probably those Rain World spears. Like they're so versatile, right? Like you like pick them up in a it's Rain World has a huge world, and there's no clear indicator of where you have to go. Um, so you can pick up a spear and you can carry it with you across like half the world, and then you can throw it into a wall to use as a platform to get to a place you couldn't get to before. And that kind of like ability to change the environment in such a impactful way just by carrying a little item around is probably like one of the seeds where Mosa Lina is coming from. Yeah, so the spear had to be there because of Rain World.
And what was your thought process behind not explaining what any of the powers do? Because sometimes I got in and I was like, I stabilize. It's a green square. What the hell is
Yeah.
this?
Stabilize is the worst offender in this regard. But
That's so
it's
powerful
it's
once you figure out what it does.
exactly, and that's why I don't explain it, essentially. Like imagine if I told you, like imagine if a little hint box pops up, like it's like a Ubisoft style user interface. It goes like stabilizers in this really small text, so you have to squint to read it. It's like, oh, stabilizers can be used to fix objects in place. You can get really creative by, for example, pushing a crate of boxes over and then stabilizing them. Use this tool to really get to the exit of the level in a cool way. Have fun. I mean, that's fucking bullshit. Like, who gives a fuck? It's yeah,
Because I remember when I
it's
first got it
uh
to work, I was spamming it in any way to figure out what it did, and
mm,
finally I died. But before I died, I noticed nothing crumbled away in one of the levels that was supposed to. I'm
ah
like, wait a
ah
minute.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a powerful emergent moment that can only happen because you got an item that you didn't understand, and then you got it again and again, right? Like if you had the choice to remove items consciously from the pool, or like not get an item ever again or something, you would have probably removed the stabilizer. Or like a large, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like a large part of people would just remove the stuff that they already understand and that they already know. Sorry, people would remove the stuff that they don't understand because it is, it's an effort to figure something out. But then that effort is rewarded with such a burst of joy, um, that yeah, it is necessary to be abstruse. This is also like Rain World again is extremely hostile. Like it took me 30 hours to really understand that game and feel like I was making actual progress towards anything. But because I stuck with it for some reason for 30 hours, because I felt that something was there, um, the moment of elation and joy that I felt when I realized I was on my way towards whatever, spoilers, I just felt so deeply and truly happy, because that was something that was happening just inside of me. Like my own real perseverance, like got me through that. Um, yeah, and those kinds of like with Dark Souls again, those kinds of moments where it's like, oh, shit, now I get it. The moment when you get it is completely unrelated to the game telling you, here's how to do it, right? That's how you get a moment that really makes you go like, oh fuck, like when you kick the ladder in Dark Souls 1, and you realize, oh shit, I just went in a circle. Like that stays with you. And that makes kicking the ladder the next 10 times you speedrun the game still like the echo of that moment remains around for a very long time and is very, very like powerful. It yeah. If you don't explain how to do something and then people genuinely figure it out themselves, their emotional like connection to that thing they did is their own and it's not manufactured. Um, yeah.
How do you end up preventing powers from being too busted, I suppose? Because I imagine you could make
Mm.
some power that would just make it easy to solve every level.
Yeah. I mean, to a degree, there are powers that are completely overpowered. What I do is I give them less ammo. You just get less uses of the really, really strong things, which has led to a kind of prevalence of items that are pretty cool, but only have like one piece of ammunition. That's kind of a pity.
God bless Upgrav.
I was considering nerfing Upgraph by making it disappear after a certain amount of time. Um, I don't know why I didn't do that. I probably just forgot about it. But yeah, no, I mean, how I make sure that the levels are not too, but like, if I mean, I don't test every level like meticulously, but I do just play a single run of the game. And if I realize that I'm only using one item, or like I always switch to that item if if I have it, um, and then I don't have to use any other item or don't have to do anything else creatively, then that just gets changed. Like I said, it's like it's been 7 months of continue. Like I'm not really playing the game right now. Like I cannot stand it anymore. It's been like 7 months of just like fine tuning a completely random thing. Where yeah, it's actually quite crazy that it works. Now that I think about it, it's just really a lot of twiddling, a lot of twiddling over many months.
How did you decide, like, it's gonna be odd. Certain items
Mm.
have like really low gravity, surprisingly, like the ladder and like the rocket, the way it floats down.
Yeah.
What was your thought process behind why some items are weighed heavily versus others?
It's like the ladder is useless otherwise, I think. Like what I really like about the ladder is that you can like it's reliable. It's essentially just a large box, but it doesn't fall apart and you can kind of maneuver it and you can kind of push it around and place it somewhere and it will not just fucking go away. But for that to happen, it has to be kind of like floaty. And maybe it's a little bit too floaty right now, but it's okay because it there's also only one of it. So it's like so essentially, those weird inconsistencies between item gravity is just the process. It's just a function of the tweaking. It's just like, oh, I make a ladder and I push it a little bit and it just falls out of the level. It's like obviously that sucks. So I have to do something here to make it interesting because the concept of a ladder is so strong that I have to find a way to put it in there, I guess. Um, yeah, and there's some that even with like super busted physics, they just never made a lot of sense, so they're just gone. Um, yeah. No, it's not yeah, not too happy about the like I'm not too happy about the inconsistencies in the shot range. Like some of the shots fly further or slower than others. And yeah, that's kind of an obtuseness that is, I think, going a little bit too far. But yeah, it's really just twiddling. It's just being like, oh, I never use the ladder, so let's make the gravity lower and see if I use it more. And it's like, oh, I use it more. Who cares? That's kind of like the process.
So you've talked about how there's a lot of content that you ended up having to cut.
Hmm.
What's been the hardest thing that you wanted in the game but you had to get rid of it?
Interesting. I'm not really sure. There's a couple of items. I'm not really married to any item specifically. There's one that I just got working today, actually, which has been kind of like a pain, which is the ability to create the ropes, like the connector things that like allow you to like like it's that was a real struggle, and that was cut from the final release because it was just not ready. But now, yeah, it's just coming in the update. Um, there's also what like from the playtesters or like Finn who has been like talking with me about this game for ages. He really likes the balloon, which is an object that you shoot and you just attach it. Essentially, you just put a little balloon around your guy and you get like higher jump strength and you can like float. But then if the balloon touches a physics object, it pops. So it makes for some really like slapstick moments where you're like floating into the ceiling and then you like plummet down to your death and stuff. That's really nice, but for various reasons relating to what like when you have like a physics object that's attached to the player, that just creates a lot of jank that is not interesting. So that is perhaps that is the one that got away. But it's only the tools that have gotten a lot of cut content for the levels. I mean, I guess some of the levels for the levels, it's like most of the levels I made. No, that's not true. It took a bunch of iterations. I made I think like 400 levels or something and deleted them before I arrived at the current selection. Yeah. No, I guess yeah, there's a bunch of levels as well. It's just a long time in the past that they got deleted.
What's your thought
Yeah.
process behind designing a level? Do you just spam random bricks? Do you have a theme
Mm.
you want to work off? Or do you have like a vision of the level already laid out?
Yeah, it's difficult. Because I have a kind of like rough feeling for what movements are hard to execute. And it's like how do I explain? There's like maybe like six, seven, eight basic level layouts. Like the fruit can be left of you, fruit can be right of you, above you, below you. It can be above and below you. It can be left and right of you. Like there's just a limited amount of configurations of portal positions and fruit positions that the game can support. There's just like a limited amount of those. And then I'm just trying to figure out which ones I haven't done as much as the other, like which is the like positioning thing that is kind of like underrepresented, because then you can just like it's not like that. It's not like I'm saying like, oh, now I'm making like fruit above and below you 10 levels. But it's like I just keep that kind of like roughly in mind and then combine that with the fact that each color of level has a different set of tiles attached to it, and those tiles kind of like facilitate different patterns of platforms. Like some of them I just make them and then they fit nicely together in a specific way. So it's like, oh, that's kind of like the basic structure of that world. And then it's never just, but it's like you combine the stuff and just make a bunch of it. And I've gotten really fast at making levels that are shippable. Like I think I made like 30 levels in like 2, 3 hours or something for the update. Like in the Mark Brown video, the level that he's describing, like that he really focuses on, I made that level in like 6 minutes and never tested it. Just nice. I was like, oh no, this is gonna work, and that was just that. Yeah. So there was a lot of, I guess there was a lot of like fiddling and doing stuff and removing stuff, and now it's just kind of like in my muscle memory. And yeah. It feels like it's getting harder to make levels though. Like it feels like, like I don't want to repeat myself too much. So, like I don't want to muddy the pool of levels with levels that are super similar. So what I'm doing when I get stuck is I just make a new tile type and I make a new shape of a tile essentially. And that single shape of a tile will, or has at least in the past consistently shown me new things I can do with the level design. So it's like when I feel like I'm running out of stuff, I just add one or two little snippets and then I keep going. Um, yeah.
So, what to you makes a good level for Mosa Lina?
uh, it shouldn't be beatable without items. That's like the thing I'm now paying closer attention to. In the Discord, people have been playing the game itemless, which is like, that is like the worst version of the game is when you don't use any of the tools.
I saw that. That shit
Um,
was hilarious.
yeah, I mean, it's really like I cannot stop them essentially. They are like someone beat the tutorial recently without using any tools.
What
Like
the
there's
fuck,
no
really?
way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like a single. It's really funny because I was editing the tutorial today. I was like adding a little. I was whatever. I was changing some stuff, and I was like, I cannot touch this specific tile at all because it's angled in a way that allows you to beat the whole level without items. Like, there's this one pixel where you can jump that makes it possible, and they found it. So it's like I will not be able to stop that from happening. But when I'm happy with a level is when I look at it and I feel like, oh, I haven't seen something like that before, right? It's like maybe it's a variation on an idea or it's a new idea. Um, there's there's a level where there's three of those like green vine thingies, three of those green plants, and they're stuck together to create like a bigger plant. And that's like, oh yeah, there's some more space there. There's some more possibility space there for cool stuff. So when that happens, I'm like, yeah, that's nice.
So how does it make you feel watching your community grow? Because you have a Discord where people are doing speed runs and, of
Mm,
course, the aforementioned itemless runs.
yeah, yeah. It's it's cool. It's scary. It's like with stuff like this, it's gonna take like a year until I can really understand how I feel about it. Right now, it just is, and I'm just happy. Like every day, I wake up and I'm just happy that they didn't start like a fucking war or like started to like there's not a fight or there's not someone just going around saying horrible racist stuff. That hasn't happened. Like people are just nice and like it's just a self-organized because there's no moderators.
Oh God.
It's just a completely yeah, there's just nothing. It's just a bunch of people hanging out and so far it's working really well. Um, but how it makes me feel, I do not know. It's cool to have an audience. It's really useful to have an audience that is actively playing the game repeatedly and like alerting me to stuff that I would never have found myself. It's also really demanding in terms of energy. Like I need to remember so much stuff. I should probably take more notes of what is happening there. But it's just a lot of people and I'm just one guy. Um, so I don't know. It's just a thing that happened, and at some point I will have to like hand the Discord over to some sort of like community support system so that they can continue doing what they want to do, but I don't have to monitor it anymore because that is really scary. Uh, yeah. I don't. So to answer your question, I don't know how I feel about it. It's generally nice. It has been comparatively extremely friendly and very uh, funny and goofy and yeah,
I
it's very
know
nice. People are very respectful to each other.
we had talked about it off camera before recording, but how was your initial reaction when you saw your game was being dissected by Game Maker's Toolkit?
Um, it's strange because I definitely watched a lot of Game Maker's Toolkit when I started to work on games. It's also really funny because you completely missed one mechanic in the game, like the item removal is just not mentioned, which is kind of interesting. Um, it's funny to hear like the guy who explained a lot of like fundamental knowledge to you call your work like clever or like interesting or whatever. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, it means more sales. It's like I essentially want to make more games. And if someone talks about that and says that the game is cool, and then people buy it because of that recommendation, I'm happy. That's nice. But this is very strange because I've had like like nobody knows me outside of a very very small community. But inside of that community, I have had a lot of moments of like meeting idols or like talking to people whose work is extreme, and it just wears off. This kind of like being struck by fame or being like, oh wow, this is the Mark Brown video. It's like, yeah, it's nice, it's cool. I'm happy that it happened, but what can I do? It's like that's cool. Like there has been a YouTuber who has been doing like a lot of YouTube videos about Mosa Lina. It's like that's really cool. That's really fucking nice. But then, what's for dinner? It's it's strange to explain because for a long time, like if 7 years ago Mark Brown would have made a video about one of my games, I would have died. I wouldn't have slept that night. I would have like run up and down and stuff. And I was very excited when I saw that it happened. But in order to maintain my ability to function, I just have to say I have to absorb all of the crazy stuff that is happening and just be like, yeah, that's a thing that happened. You know, and tomorrow I'm going to meet my friends and we're gonna like talk about their studies because it's like it's my life. It's not yeah. I have to be very careful there to not fall into that hole because that just makes me unable to actually do any work or enjoy my life. Yeah, very long answer. So yeah, Mark Brown is a cool. It feels cool. I'm so happy.
What was your thought
Uh,
process behind like the upgraded level, like the last level?
mm,
Because the very first time I got there, I was like, I hate this
mm.
level. It's the last one. I got this, and then I saw there was a third fruit. I was like, fuck you.
Um, the thought process behind that is not coming from me, actually. That happened during the demo. The demo launched, and the demo is still up on Newgrounds, by the way. Um, the demo launched with a static boss level. These were like handcrafted levels, just like the normal levels. They were just longer and more difficult. And then when I had the demo uploaded, a streamer called SD, I hope I pronounced that right, played it, and I was cooking dinner and I was watching the stream, and he was really disappointed that the game didn't have procedural generation. Um, and but I also knew that procedural generation wouldn't work because you only feel cool about solving a level if you can get the same level later again and solve it more efficiently or in a funnier way. Like, as much as everything is random, there needs to be some solidity to what you're experiencing. Like, if the tools were genuinely like procedurally generated tools, um, each run might be super unique, but you would feel no ownership over your understanding of them. Um, so the boss levels are a kind of like compromise between the desire for more randomized level creation and the reality that raw procedural generation produces endless amounts of porridge that nobody wants to eat. Um, so yeah, the thought like, and then it was like, okay, it's actually a really complicated piece of technology to like take a level and then put a different level into it, and yeah, it was a lot of work, and I did it like I think 2 days before the game released completely. So it was a huge gamble, but it paid off very, very handsomely. But it wasn't my idea. It was all triggered by SD in the stream, and then also Fabricated Reality in the Discord has also been pushing for something similar. Yeah, that comes from the players actually. I can't take credit for that.
What was your thought process behind? Because the collectibles are fruit, and if you get them all, you can exit the
Mm,
level. But you can also just destroy the fruit by throwing it out the level. And the very
yeah.
first time I did that in the tutorial, I was like, "Well, I ruined the level," and the portal opened. I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, that's in the second version of Mussolina. There's everything wraps like in that in a earlier version. The fruits you push out of the level just come back on the other side of the screen. Um, which is pretty cool and which like makes for some really funny solutions and really funny puzzle stuff. Like it's really a nice thing, to be honest. But when I started to add things like the spears, or the bridge connectors, or when stuff got really crazy with how you could change the level and how things would be attached to each other, um, it became kind of clear that like if you build a large structure out of many spears and attach that to a fruit and then shoot all of that out of the level, um, and it has to kind of like it can't just wrap, right? Like you have to disable the physics and place it on a position where it will come out on top of the level, and then you have to kind of like reconstruct that whole structure that was assembled dynamically. You have to kind of like save the state of a huge complicated structure that exists of many parts that I cannot predict, and teleport that and like assemble it in one frame on top and maintain velocity. And that just wasn't the technical thing I could do. Um, so I said, "Oh, okay, whatever. Fruits just, they die when you push them out because the original solution wasn't technically feasible." It was a huge struggle actually to make people realize like the thing you describe as pushing it out of the level and being like, "Oh shit, the tutorial level is designed in a way that you are very likely to have to push the fruit out of the level so that you notice this." Because that was like the number one concern in playtesting, that people didn't realize they could push the fruit out of the level. So the tutorial is like the most handcrafted thing, and it's very deliberate, and it kind of succeeds, I guess, at teaching you those things, which is nice.
I will say, fun story. The phaser, my girlfriend, because we were playing together, like taking turns, like in that pass and play mode. Um,
Mm,
and she shot the phaser out, and it just does the thing where it just constantly comes back in the level until it hits something.
yeah,
So she
yeah.
missed and decided to go and solve the level normally, and she got it. And right before she hit the portal, the phaser came
Oh.
back to hit a brick and then dropped her off a cliff, and she died.
Yeah. No, that's really funny. I'm very like that was also, I think, a suggestion from the Discord, to make the phaser rap. And that is such a comedy gold to have that item wrap is really fucking nice.
Well, one
Yeah.
time I fucked up a level, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna solve it. And then I saw my phaser pop out in the corner and hit the
Yes.
fruit. I was like, God damn it, yes!
Yeah. It's really fun. I don't know. I was playtesting, I think, some boss level code stuff, and I was like, the only way to solve it was to basically like shoot the phaser and wait for like half a minute until it would hit something because it had to loop like multiple times. And then I have to wait like 30 seconds to jump on the fruit. And then directly after I touch the fruit, because the fruit is at the bottom of the screen and I will just die otherwise, directly after I touch it, I have to teleport. And I missed it by like zero point 0.3 seconds. And I teleported to the portal without having touched the fruit. It was such a
Ah,
strong moment. It's really good. It's very nice. Very
well,
happy with those suggestions.
your next suggestion in Discord should be like, you know how you have pool trick shots? You could do like a phaser trick shot to be able to get certain things.
Yeah, I mean, you can shoot like a spear through the phaser and it will trigger the phaser actually.
What?
Um,
That's nuts.
yeah. It's really crazy. It took me like I coded the phaser and the spears, and then for 3 months I was playing the game, and then I discovered that like myself, and I was so mind blown. Such a cool moment. And then I think one day after the release, people were already having added that to the tech section in the Discord.
Well,
Like they
there's
discovered it so quickly, but yeah, it's a yeah. I'm sorry for robbing you of that moment. Um,
no, it's no problem. I kind of love seeing other people make discoveries, like watching the Mark Brown video. He was
yeah,
like, "Yeah, you could just use the spear to sink the fruit down." I was like, "What the
yeah,
fuck? You can do that?" And it just made me want to go
yeah,
back and play the game to see like what other
exactly.
weird
Yeah,
stuff I could think of.
yeah, yeah. No, it's really nice.
How did you come up with the idea that the player doesn't have a head; it's just the ammo type?
It's also not my idea. That comes from Youngmin Park, a South Korean game developer. We were in Germany together, and he was playing the game, and he was at that time it was an astronaut. Like at that time, the game still had like lore and like a story, and was trying to be like about a specific thing. Um, and I was very adamant about like, no, the character it needs to be an astronaut, and it's this whole lore, and like, no, I don't like the idea. And then I put it in, and it was like, oh yeah, Youngman Park is right. I'm wrong. So thanks to Youngman Park for telling me.
So I've got to ask, what's next for Mosa Lina going forward?
um, I'm working on a pretty substantial update, I guess. Like it's been difficult to like figure out what people want, or like what people like. It's not easy. This is the first time I'm doing like a live service game. So it's like it's a really strange thing to just update a game and then people will complain about the changes inevitably. Um, so what's next is next week, like this tomorrow. Oh my, the cat is getting into some. Maybe there's going to be a huge noise because the cat throws a lot of stuff over.
Oh, my dog had
Um,
a squeaky toy like the first five
nice.
minutes.
So what's next is essentially I'm going to make more levels. I'm going to make more boss level segments, increasing that variety a lot. Essentially, what I'm going to go for with the game is to make as much variety as possible. That's like the North Star. That's the pillar. I want each run to be as different from another run as possible. Um, so there's going to be a new system that like takes one of the levels and like adds an NPC to it. Um, and then you have to kind of like escort that NPC to make sure they don't die. And if they die, you fail the level. So then, with that NPC, suddenly every level suddenly gets completely recontextualized and different. And some levels that are super easy become super hard because the NPC spawns above like a pit or something like that. Um, and then there's more items. Like I said before, I finished today 3 items that will get added in the next update, and different secret things that people will have to discover on their own that I'm not going to spoil. But essentially, going forward, I think maybe I can get it up to like 30 items or something. And maybe like 300, 400 levels or something like that. Um, that is the goal, the rough goal, the rough idea until like December. Um, and then I'm gonna be done with updating the game, I guess. Like it's kind of strange to have like the biggest success of my career and then be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work on this for 2 more months and then I'm gonna drop it, which is like kind of like antithetical to the whole updating games forever mode. But I just have other stuff to do. And I'm pretty sure that by the time I'm finished with the game, it's going to be extremely varied and full of stuff that can like right now I think it would honestly be okay if I stopped working on the game right now. Like people are expecting it, and I said I would and I will update the game, but it's like for the price, what you get right now is more than enough. So I'm not feeling too worried about that. And there is after this recording, I have a meeting with someone who's been actually working on modding support for the game. Who's like, I don't know how they did it. I will find out, but they've been able to make like a level editor that works. And if everything goes well, I don't want to promise anything that is technically impossible for weird reasons because tech fucking sucks ass. Um, yeah, probably I'm going to be able to hand over the game to the community with modding support, so they can do whatever they want, and then um, that should, yeah, the Gary's mod of infinite content.
Well, Josh, I think it's been wonderful having you on the podcast. Is
Mm.
there
That's
anything
been
you want
nice.
to shout out in particular? Any of your links or local pizza place?
Mm, I want to give a shout out to the pizza place in Graz, where when I was seriously depressed, I kept ordering pizza. Um, they have a pizza. I don't even know the name of them. I just want to introduce your audience to the concept of pizza roulette. I think the world should know more about this concept. Essentially, you just make a pizza or you order one, and then you take really, really spicy chili oil and you put it on 1/4 of the pizza. And then um, because it's it should be like clear chili oil, like you shouldn't be able to see it. Then you just like spin the pizza around, everyone takes a slice, and yeah, 2 or 3 people will suffer. That's pizza roulette. Shout out pizza roulette.
See, you'd think we'd suffer, but my friend, I watch him go to Hot Pot, take a whole cup of chili oil, a whole cup of jalapenos, order the
uh,
spiciest fucking soup, and just dump it all together. And he's like, perfect. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, then for that guy, the roulette is trying to get the spicy part so that he can feel anything, you know.
So he's not
Like,
dead inside.
yeah. If he doesn't get the spicy part, he loses. It's just same game, different goals.
So, for anyone listening, YouTube channel's official paper prototypes if you're watching there, but I'm also on Spotify under the same name. You can find me on Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky, mostly on Twitter, but I'm hoping to change that eventually because Twitter sucks. And in the
Mhm.
description, you'll find my link tree for all the websites, including my Ko-Fi, if you want to support me in my podcast. And that's the end of the podcast. So I'll see everyone on the next episode. Bye!
Hey.